"You're coming with me?" said the cowboy softly after finding her on the cold ground, her body. The wind came hard across the open prairie, cold enough to sting the eyes. The sky was a flat gray sheet, and the sun looked like a pale coin behind cloud. Out here, sound traveled far, but today even the land felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. Caleb Rourke rode alone. He was a cowboy by choice and a ranger by history. Years ago, he wore a badge for the frontier service, patrolling the far edges where towns were small and rules were thinner. Now he lived on his own spread of land, a ranch station built from steel panels and old timber, half powered by solar and half by stubborn will. Caleb did not talk much. He listened. He watched. Today he was following something he could not explain. It started that morning when his old wrist scanner chirped once and showed a faint distress pulse. The signal was weak, like it had crawled out of the ground itself. Most folks did not carry emergency beacons out here anymore. The prairie was too wide, and most people stayed near the rail lines or the protected roads, but the pulse was real. It had a code, and the code was not local. It was older, built on a standard that the Frontier Service used back when the councils first mapped these territories. Caleb could have ignored it. He should have ignored it. But he had learned something in his years. The land did not send warnings for fun. When the prairie spoke, you listened. So he saddled his horse, a calm bay named Ash, and rode out. The old rail line cut across the prairie like a scar, its metal tracks half buried by sand. The newer hover routes ran farther south, where the government kept them smooth and clean. Out here, the rail line was mostly forgotten. Only scavengers and stubborn ranchers still used it. Caleb followed the scanner's arrow, moving slow. His long coat snapped in the wind. Beneath it, he wore a simple shirt, work pants, and a holster with a utility tool, part blade, part wrench, part everything. He carried a sidearm too, but he did not touch it unless he had to. The signal pulled him toward a shallow dip in the land, where broken concrete blocks poked from the ground like old bones. A rusted sign leaned at an angle, the paint gone. Something had once stood here, maybe a small depot, maybe a fuel stop. Now it was just empty. Caleb slowed Ash and scanned the area with his eyes. He saw no movement, no tracks, no smoke. For a moment he thought the signal might be a trick, some old device glitching after years of sleep. Then Ash snorted softly. Caleb followed the horse's gaze and saw her. A figure lay on the ground near a tumble of scrap metal, half in the open, half sheltered by a broken panel. At first she looked like a pile of cloth, then her fingers moved just a little like a leaf shaking in wind. Caleb slid down from the saddle, boots crunching on frost-hard dirt. He walked slow, hands open, not wanting to scare her. Up close he saw she was a woman, maybe in her 20s or early 30s. Her hair was dark and tangled, dusted with bits of dry grass. Her face was pale from cold. Her lips were cracked. She wore a light travel jacket torn at the sleeve and thin gloves that had ripped open at the fingertips. She was alive. Barely. Caleb knelt beside her and checked her breathing. It was shallow but steady. He touched the side of her neck to feel her pulse. It was quick and weak like a frightened bird. Her eyes fluttered open. They were sharp even through the fog of exhaustion. She tried to pull away, but her body did not have the strength. Caleb spoke softly. "Easy, you're safe." Her gaze flicked to his hat, his coat, the badge-shaped scar on his belt buckle, an old frontier symbol. Then her eyes darted to the horizon as if she expected something to rise out of the gray. Caleb followed her look. Nothing, only wind, clouds, and far-off hills. He noticed something on her wrist. A band of metal, thin and dark, wrapped around her skin. Not jewelry, not a normal tracker either. It looked like tech, but not the kind sold in town markets. Small lines ran across it like etched rivers, and in the center a faint light pulsed once, then faded. Caleb frowned. That light did not match the cold, dead world around them. It looked too clean, too advanced. He felt the old instincts from his ranger days wake up inside him. He did not ask too many questions yet. Cold could kill faster than any secret. He took off his coat and laid it over her shoulders, tucking it around her like a blanket. She trembled, not only from fear but from freezing. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small heat pack, the kind ranchers used for injured calves. He snapped it, and the pack warmed in seconds. He placed it gently near her chest, then offered her a sip of water from his canteen. She tried to drink but coughed. Caleb held her steady, patient. Slow, just a little. After a few careful sips, she swallowed and breathed again. Her eyes stayed on him, watching, measuring. Caleb could feel the weight of the empty land around them. He had the strange sense that they were not truly alone. The scanner on his wrist beeped once, then went silent. The distress pulse was no longer calling. It had led him here, and now it was done. The woman's lips moved. No sound came out. Caleb leaned closer. "What's your name?" She stared at him as if the question was too heavy. Then very quietly she tried again. "Mara," she whispered. The name came out rough, like she had not spoken in a long time. Caleb nodded once. "All right, Mara, I'm Caleb." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in disbelief, like she did not expect kindness to have a name. The wind shifted. A sharper gust rolled over the dip in the land, and Mara shivered hard. Caleb looked at her torn sleeve. The skin beneath was red from cold, but there were no fresh wounds. Her injuries were mostly from exposure and exhaustion. That was strange, too. People left on the prairie usually had signs of a struggle, bruises, cuts, desperate scratches. Myra looked like someone who had run far, fallen, and then simply been left. Caleb stood and looked around again. That was when he saw the track. A set of marks in the dirt half covered by frost. Not horse tracks, not boot prints either. They were narrow lines like something had slid over the ground without weight. Hover bike, and not just one, several. They circled the area but did not come too close, like the riders had stayed back and watched. Caleb's jaw tightened. Whoever had been here did not want to leave normal signs, but they had left enough. He crouched again, gently sliding an arm under Mara's shoulders and another under her knees. She was lighter than she should have been, as if hunger had already started stealing pieces of her. She flinched when he lifted her. Caleb kept his voice calm. "I'm taking you somewhere warm." Her eyes widened. "No, her voice broke. She tried to sit up, panic rising. Caleb held her steady. "No one's here, not right now." She grabbed his sleeve weakly, fingers cold. "They will come." Caleb looked into her eyes. "Then we won't be here when they do." He carried her to Ash. The horse shifted and snorted again, but stayed calm, as if understanding this was not a threat. Caleb tied Mara carefully to the saddle in front of him, using straps and a blanket so she would not slip. He made sure she was secure, then climbed up behind her. Before riding off, he scanned the horizon one more time. Far above, hidden in the clouds, a small dot moved. Caleb did not notice it, but the dot watched. A silent drone, no bigger than a hawk, drifted on the wind. Its lens turned, locking onto the cowboy and the woman. A tiny signal pulsed from it, traveling far beyond the prairie, toward a place where men in clean coats and cold rooms waited for updates. Caleb nudged Ash forward and rode toward his ranch station, keeping to low ground and natural cover. He did not know what Mara carried on her wrist, or why she had been left to freeze. He did not know why hover bikes had circled this spot like wolves. But he knew one thing for sure. The prairie had given him a warning, and he had answered. Now the land would demand a price. As they rode, Mara's head leaned back against his chest. Her breathing steadied as the warmth from his coat and the heat pack spread through her body. Her eyes stayed open, though. She watched the gray sky like she expected it to crack open. Caleb kept his arms around her, steady and careful, guiding Ash through the cold. "You're coming with me," he said again, softer this time, not as an order. As a promise, the ranch stood alone against the wide prairie, a quiet place built from patience and years of hard work. Steel walls reflected the gray sky, and windmills turned slowly in the cold air. Solar panels tilted toward the weak sun, gathering what little light they could. Caleb guided Ash toward the main barn, the horse's steady steps echoing softly across frozen ground. Mara barely moved as they arrived. Caleb dismounted carefully, holding her close so she would not fall. She felt lighter than before, her strength nearly gone, but her eyes remained open, alert and searching. Every shadow seemed to make her tense. "You're safe here," Caleb said gently, though he knew safety was never certain on the frontier. Inside the barn, warmth greeted them. A heater hummed quietly near the wall, powered by the ranch's energy system. Caleb laid Mara on a long wooden bench covered with blankets. He worked quickly but calmly, removing her torn gloves and checking her hands. Her skin was cold but slowly warming. He filled a metal cup with warm broth from a small kitchen unit and offered it to her. "Drink slow," he said. Myra hesitated, studying his face. Trust did not come easily to her, but after a moment she accepted the cup and took a small sip. Her shoulders relaxed slightly as warmth spread through her. Caleb stepped back to give her space. He knew better than to ask too many questions too soon. Outside, the wind grew stronger, rattling the barn doors. Time passed quietly. Mara watched everything, the tools hanging neatly on the wall, the saddle racks, the soft glow of control panels embedded into the structure. This was not just a ranch. It was a mix of old cowboy life and advanced frontier technology. "You live alone?" she asked finally, her voice still weak. Caleb nodded. "Mostly." She lowered her gaze. Silence fell again. After making sure she was stable, Caleb walked toward the small control console near the door. He tapped a few commands, activating perimeter sensors. The ranch's defenses were old but reliable, motion detectors, signal dampeners, and hidden shields buried under the ground. As the system powered up, a faint alert blinked on the screen. Unidentified scans detected earlier. Direction, north. Caleb frowned. He turned back toward Mara, who now sat upright, wrapped in blankets. Her eyes followed his movements carefully. "You said they will come," he said calmly. "Who are they?" Mara looked down at her wrist device, the faint glow now stronger than before. She hesitated, as if choosing between silence and truth. "I don't know everything," she said slowly. "Only pieces. I was somewhere, a facility, cold rooms, machines. They said I was important." Her voice trembled slightly. "They watched me, tested me. I ran." Caleb listened without interruption. "Why were they testing you?" he asked gently. Mara shook her head. "I don't remember all of it." She pressed her fingers against the metal band on her wrist. The device flickered, projecting faint symbols into the air, shapes and star patterns that looked far more advanced than anything common on the frontier. Caleb stepped closer, curiosity mixing with concern. "That's not standard tech," he said quietly. Myra gave a small, sad smile. "I know." Suddenly, the device beeped softly and a stream of data scrolled across the projection. Coordinates, codes, unknown languages. Caleb reached out carefully, not touching her but observing. "You mind if I take a closer look?" She hesitated again, then nodded. He retrieved a small tool kit and activated a portable scanner. The moment it came near the device, the scanner's lights flashed rapidly, struggling to interpret the signal. "Well," Caleb muttered, "that's something." The system identified encrypted layers, security locks far beyond civilian level. He had seen similar coding once during his Ranger days, equipment tied to Council research programs, highly classified. He sat back slowly. "You're not just a runaway traveler," he said. Mara looked away. Before either of them could speak again, the ranch's outer alarm chimed once, a quiet warning tone. Caleb stood instantly, eyes moving to the control panel. A distant object appeared on the sensor grid, moving slowly across the sky. Too high to be a local drone, too controlled to be random debris, Mara saw his reaction. Fear returned to her eyes. "They found me," she whispered. Caleb did not answer immediately. He watched the display, measuring distance and speed. The object did not approach directly. It hovered far away, scanning. He turned to Mara. "You need rest. We'll figure this out." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They don't stop." Caleb crossed his arms thoughtfully. Years of experience told him panic solved nothing. "Then we make sure they don't find what they're looking for," he said calmly. He moved around the barn, activating signal dampeners. The ranch's systems began masking electronic signatures, hiding power readings and communication signals. Outside, the windmill slowed as non-essential systems powered down to reduce detection. Myra watched him work, surprised by his calm focus. "You're not afraid?" she asked. Caleb paused. "Everyone feels fear. You just decide what to do with it." The drone remained far away but continued scanning. Night fell slowly over the prairie. Inside the ranch, soft lights glowed. Caleb prepared a simple meal, bread, soup, and tea, and placed it on the table near Mara. She ate slowly, like someone relearning how to trust normal moments. Afterward, exhaustion finally caught up with her. Caleb guided her to a small guest room, warm and simple. She hesitated at the doorway. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Caleb thought for a moment. "Because you needed help." She stared at him as if expecting more explanation. "That's enough reason," he added. Mara lay down, pulling the blanket close. Within minutes, her breathing deepened as sleep took her. Caleb returned to the control room. The drone had moved slightly closer. He watched it through a magnified lens, a sleek machine, silent and patient. Whoever controlled it was careful, waiting for confirmation before acting. Caleb's old instincts sharpened. He opened a hidden panel beneath the console and revealed equipment he had not used in years, Ranger-grade shielding systems and emergency weapons, all maintained but rarely touched. He activated a low-level defensive shield around the ranch. A faint shimmer passed over the land, invisible unless you knew where to look. Outside, the prairie remained silent. Hours passed. Near midnight, Mara woke suddenly, breath quick. Memories returned to her in flashes, bright lights, voices, cold rooms, and a command repeated again and again. She must not escape. She sat up, clutching her wrist. The device glowed brighter than before. Caleb entered quietly. Bad dreams. She nodded, tears forming but not falling. They said I wasn't a person, she whispered. Just a connection. Caleb did not ask for details. Instead, he handed her a warm drink. You decide who you are, he said. She looked at him, something changing behind her eyes, a small spark of strength. Outside, the drone shifted position again, sending a new signal into the dark sky. Far away, engines responded. Caleb sensed it before the alarms confirmed it. More ships were coming. He glanced toward the horizon through the window, his expression calm but serious. The quiet life he had built was about to change, and he knew one thing for certain. Whoever wanted Mara was powerful. But they had chosen the wrong ranch to approach. Night covered the prairie like a heavy blanket. The wind slowed, but the silence felt sharper than before. Caleb stood near the control panel inside the ranch, watching the horizon through a wide digital display. Small lights moved across the screen, distant signals, slow but steady. They were coming closer. Myra stood behind him, wrapped in a warm coat he had given her. The color had returned slightly to her face, but tension remained in her posture. She watched the screen carefully, as if she recognized the patterns. They don't rush, she said quietly. They watch first, they wait. Caleb nodded. That tells me they're careful. It tells me they're certain, she replied. The ranch's systems hummed softly as shields remained active. Outside, Ash rested inside the stable, calm despite the tension in the air. The ranch itself felt like a small island in a sea of darkness. Caleb moved to a cabinet and pulled out an old metal case. He opened it slowly. Inside were tools from his ranger days, small defensive drones, signal blockers, and a long rifle designed more for precision than harm. He checked each piece carefully, moving with calm focus. Myra watched him. You've done this before, she said. Yes, he answered simply. Fighting, he paused. Protecting. Her gaze softened slightly at the word. A sudden alert flashed on the screen. Multiple incoming signatures. 3 fast-moving hover bikes appeared on the sensor grid, approaching from the north. They stayed low to the ground, using terrain to hide their movement. Caleb's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. They're early, he said. Myra stepped closer, fear rising again. They won't stop. Neither will we, he replied calmly. He activated additional defenses. Panels slid open along the ranch's outer walls, revealing small automated lights and scanning devices. A low-frequency signal spread across the land, disrupting incoming communications. Outside, faint engine sounds echoed across the prairie. The riders arrived just beyond the main fence line, their bikes hovering silently above the frozen grass. Dark figures sat atop them, wearing smooth armor that reflected the faint starlight. They did not attack immediately. Instead, one rider stepped forward, raising a hand. A voice projected through a speaker, calm and controlled. Return the subject. No harm will come to you. Myra's breath caught. Caleb stepped outside, leaving the barn doors slightly open behind him. The cold air hit his face, but he stood tall, hands relaxed at his sides. This is private land, he said evenly. Turn around. The armored figure tilted its helmet slightly. You are interfering with council property. Caleb almost smiled at the words. People aren't property. A pause followed. The riders remained still, as if calculating. Then the speaker responded again. Last warning. Caleb did not move. Behind him, Mara stood at the doorway, watching. Suddenly, the ranch's shield flickered as a scanning beam passed over it. The riders were testing defenses, looking for weaknesses. Caleb tapped a small control device hidden in his palm. Signal disruptors activated, scrambling the beam. The riders reacted instantly. 2 of them split to the sides, circling the ranch, while the third remained in front. Caleb moved back toward the barn slowly. He did not want to fight, but he knew they would push until they got what they wanted. A flash of light cut through the darkness, not an explosion, just a pulse designed to disable systems. The ranch lights flickered but held. Caleb pressed another command, and a defensive drone lifted from the roof, hovering quietly between him and the riders. Leave, he said again. The lead rider raised an arm, and smaller drones launched from the bikes, moving toward the ranch like silent birds. Myra stepped forward suddenly, her wrist device glowing brighter. She lifted her hand instinctively. The drones slowed. Caleb turned in surprise. Myra's eyes were wide, not fully understanding what she was doing. The glowing symbols from her device spread into the air, forming faint patterns. The incoming machines hesitated, their movements disrupted. I can feel them," she whispered. Caleb realized she was interfacing with the technology. "Keep going," he said calmly. The drones froze completely, hovering motionless. The riders reacted quickly, pulling back. Their comm control shifted into urgency. "She's adapting," one of them said through the speaker. Myra's breathing quickened, but she did not stop. The glow from her wrist spread across the ranch's systems, strengthening the shields. Caleb watched, understanding growing. They weren't just chasing her. They were afraid of what she could become. The lead rider raised its weapon again, preparing another pulse. Before it fired, Caleb triggered a bright light flare from the roof. The sudden burst blinded sensors momentarily. Using the distraction, he activated a ground pulse that disrupted hover systems. 2 bikes wobbled and dropped slightly before stabilizing. The riders realized the ranch was not an easy target. "Retreat!" the lead voice ordered. The bikes lifted higher, backing away slowly. Within moments they turned and disappeared into the dark sky. Silence returned. Mara lowered her hand, shaking from effort. The glow faded. Caleb approached her gently. "You did good." She looked at him, overwhelmed. "I didn't know I could do that." "You're learning," he said. She stared at her wrist device, confusion mixed with fear. "They said I was a bridge between systems." Caleb nodded slowly. Looks like they were right. But he saw something else too. She had not harmed anyone. She had only stopped the machines. The ranch felt different now, like the quiet before a larger storm. Caleb returned to the control panel. More signals appeared on the horizon, bigger ships, slower but stronger. "They're calling reinforcements," he said. Myra swallowed hard. "They won't stop until they take me." Caleb looked at her steadily. "Then we don't stay here." Her eyes widened. "You would leave your home." He glanced around the ranch, years of work, memories, peace. Then he looked back at her. "It's just a place," he said quietly. She understood what he meant. He began packing supplies quickly, food, tools, power cells. He prepared ash and loaded gear onto a small transport vehicle hidden behind the barn. The sky grew darker as clouds moved overhead. Myra stepped outside, feeling the cold wind on her face. For the first time since waking, she felt something other than fear. Hope. She turned to Caleb. "Where will we go?" He smiled slightly. "Somewhere they won't expect." Engines roared faintly in the distance, growing louder. Time was running out. Together they climbed onto the transport, leaving the ranch behind as shields powered down and lights faded. As they rode into the open prairie under the stars, the ranch stood silent behind them, a small symbol of defiance against those who believed control mattered more than choice. And ahead the frontier waited. The transport vehicle moved fast across the open prairie, its engine humming softly as Caleb guided it through narrow paths only a rancher would know. The night sky stretched wide above them, filled with cold stars and drifting clouds. Behind them, the ranch grew smaller until it disappeared into darkness. Myra sat beside him, wrapped in a thick blanket. The glow from her wrist device pulsed slowly, like a quiet heartbeat. She watched the horizon carefully, every sound making her tense. "They will follow," she said softly. Caleb nodded. "Yes, but we won't make it easy." He adjusted the controls, steering the transport toward rocky hills far to the east. The land there was rough and uneven, filled with old mining tunnels and abandoned stations, places that confused scanners and blocked long-range signals. The engine sound blended with the wind. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Mara closed her eyes briefly, trying to gather her thoughts. Memories returned in fragments, white rooms, soft voices, machines connecting to her mind. She remembered feeling alone, like she was being studied instead of understood. Now she was free, but not safe. "Where are we going?" she asked again. "An old spaceport," Caleb said. "Hidden under the hills, used to be a ranger outpost long ago. Not many people remember it." She nodded slowly. Silence followed, comfortable but heavy. After several hours, the ground began to rise. Jagged rocks broke the flat prairie, casting long shadows in the moonlight. Caleb slowed the transport, guiding it carefully between narrow passages. Soon they reached a massive metal door half buried in sand and stone. It looked abandoned, rust covering parts of its surface. Caleb stepped out and approached a small control panel hidden behind a broken plate. He brushed away dust and pressed a sequence of old codes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, deep beneath the ground, machines awakened. The door groaned and slowly slid open, revealing a dark tunnel leading underground. Mara watched in awe. "You kept secrets," she said quietly. Caleb smiled faintly. "Every ranger did." They drove inside, and the door closed behind them, sealing away the cold night. Lights flickered on one by one, illuminating a large underground hangar. Old ships rested along the walls, covered in dust but still strong. Control stations lined the far side, silent for years. Myra stepped out slowly, looking around. "This place feels safe." "For now," Caleb said. He moved quickly, activating power systems and scanning equipment. The hangar's shield came online, creating a protective barrier that masked their presence. Mara walked toward the center of the room, her footsteps echoing softly. Her wrist device reacted to the environment, glowing brighter as if recognizing old technology. Suddenly, a projection appeared in the air, star maps, data streams, encrypted signals. She gasped. "It's connecting," she whispered. Caleb approached carefully. "What does it show?" Mara studied the symbols. Understanding came slowly, like memories unlocking. "They were using me to control systems," she said. "Ships, networks, communication lines. I wasn't just a subject, I was a key." Her voice trembled but held strength. "They wanted to use me to control entire fleets." Caleb's expression darkened slightly. "That's why they won't stop," she nodded. Outside, faint vibrations passed through the rock. Sensors beeped. Incoming ships. "They found us already," she said. Caleb moved to the console, checking readings. Several large signals appeared, more advanced than the hover bikes from before. "This will be the main group," he said calmly. Fear flashed across Mara's face. "I don't want anyone hurt." "Then we end this another way," Caleb replied. He turned toward her. "You said you're a bridge between systems. Maybe you don't have to fight them with weapons." She understood what he meant. Mara walked to the central control station. The wrist device glowed intensely, projecting light across the hangar. She closed her eyes, focusing. At first, nothing happened. Then the old systems responded. Lights brightened. Consoles activated. Signals spread outward from the spaceport like invisible waves. Above ground, the incoming ships slowed, their scanners disrupted by a new network overriding their commands. Mara breathed deeply, guiding the flow. She did not try to control the ships, only to speak through their systems. Her voice traveled across channels. "I will not return," she said, calm but firm. "You cannot own me." The ships hesitated. A reply came through the speakers, cold and official. "You belong to the council program." Myra opened her eyes. Strength filled her voice. "No, I choose who I am." She accessed stored data from her device, files revealing the experiments, the way people were treated as tools. With a single command, she sent the information across open channels, broadcasting it beyond the frontier. Signals spread across nearby systems, reaching stations and colonies. Truth traveled faster than ships. Inside the hangar, silence fell as they waited. The ships outside shifted position. Confusion spread through their formations. Caleb watched carefully, ready for anything. Minutes passed. Finally, one by one, the ships began to withdraw. Their mission had changed. With the truth exposed, continuing would bring too much attention. Mara lowered her hands slowly. The glow faded. "It's over," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "Looks like you won without firing a shot." Relief washed over her, followed by exhaustion. She laughed softly, a sound filled with disbelief. They stood together in the quiet hangar, the danger slowly fading. After some time, Caleb powered down unnecessary systems and prepared a small fire unit for warmth. They sat near it, sharing food from his supplies. Mara looked at him thoughtfully. "You left everything to help me," he shrugged gently. "Sometimes you meet someone who needs help." "That's enough," she smiled faintly. "What will you do now?" she asked. He leaned back, looking toward the ceiling where faint light reflected off old metal beams. "Frontiers wide," he said. "Always another road." Mara watched him, then looked at her wrist device. "For the first time," she said slowly, "I feel like my future belongs to me." Caleb nodded. "That's how it should be." Later, they walked toward the hangar entrance. The massive door opened slightly, revealing dawn breaking over the prairie. Golden light spread across the land, warm and calm. The storm had passed. Mara stepped forward, breathing in the cold morning air. Caleb joined her. Where to? She asked. He smiled, eyes on the horizon. Anywhere we choose. Together they walked toward the waiting transport, leaving behind fear and control. The frontier stretched ahead, endless, uncertain, and full of possibility, and this time they would face it side by side.